The tale kicks off with the doctor asking Tazem how he feels today, only for the boy to sigh and think that it's always the same question. Feeling down, the young man winces that his legs still hurt, convinced in his head that this is the same answer he gives every single day. The doctor nods in understanding and starts chatting with the nurse while our hero, lost in thought, admits he stopped trying to guess when everything went bad. The nurse leads the boy to his room, but he tells her that everything was already finished the moment he woke up. After the crash, the only things left for him were sad looks from others and monthly bills. But the worst of all was the cruel truth that he was now in a wheelchair, and his face showed how broken he felt. He says the crash wasn't anyone's fault, but a reckless, drunk driver who just didn't know how to drive. The day dragged on, painfully boring. Tom made his way to the convenience store. The young man left to grab some beers and food, but that day felt just a little bit different. Our hero stares blankly at his phone as a truck suddenly roars toward him. The day was different because bad luck cost him his freedom. The young man realizes what's happening and panics, but before he can do anything, the things in his hands suddenly shoot up into the sky and hit him. He said it was a terrible day that destroyed his life right as the nurse was helping the boy lie down on the stretcher. Tassin says his legs hurt so bad it felt like they were being ripped right out of him. Staring at his medicine-soaked hand, the boy realizes he has no choice but to take it every night just to stop the pain. Finally, the boy says that while people claim God only sends trials we can handle, he'd rather be dead than endure this. After a while, it grew dark and the boy was given medicine to calm him down at the hospital, but he still couldn't find sleep. Holding the phone, the boy admitted that as a paraplegic, his days were mostly spent reading novels. The boy also thinks he began reading a new story last week while staring at his phone, amazed by the notification that he'd just gotten 50 free chapters. Townend found that whenever he read a story with a happy ending, the warmth of the tale made him feel better and offered comfort on days when sadness felt too heavy to carry. After pulling an all-nighter with a blank stare, the boy thought he was almost done with the novel and could finish it before bed. Tong wraps up the tale by saying the wizard Idan swept everything in his way aside, won the day, and then decided to build a fresh world. He wiped away the old world to build his own perfect one, and with everyone's memories gone, everyone lived happily ever after. Even the ones who lost loved ones in terrible ways, and the ones who survived were there, and in the new world, everyone lived happily without ever remembering the war. But with that ending, our hero was furious and couldn't stop wondering what on earth had just happened. He believes the hero did everything they could to save the world. But Aiden ended up breaking everything he tried to save, just to build a new world for himself. Trembling, Taesong wonders why the book he picked at random just had to end badly. With his hands pressed to his head, the boy starts sobbing uncontrollably, wondering why happiness always seems out of reach no matter what he does. He convinced himself that he didn't care about the book's ending, and that even if he woke up tomorrow, he'd never see a happy ending, so the only thing left to do was fall asleep and face the real world. But before the 4 is even placed in his arm, a blue light starts glowing and fills the whole hospital. A glowing window pops up to announce that the wizard who rules the world has started his mission, and you can see someone with sharp eyes waking up. Tom, who had been totally different when he woke up, is now completely lost and doesn't know what is going on. He felt like he'd just spotted a secret message right before him and couldn't stop wondering what it meant. The boy stares at his legs and wonders if the pain has tricked him into seeing something that isn't really there. But when he glanced to the side, he realized he wasn't in the hospital anymore, but in a totally different house. As Tis looks at the old, rough house, he starts to ask himself where he is and what is going on. The boy says he fell asleep in a hospital and is trying to figure out what's real, so Ta asks if he's dreaming while he looks for his phone. While looking for his phone, the boy spots a pot of water beside him and sees his own reflection, sweating nervously as he realizes his face looks like that of a completely new person. Our hero starts shaking the water bucket, desperate to see what has changed his face, because the stranger staring back isn't him. Even stranger, the boy realizes his legs moved all on their own just as he figured out what he was doing. Suddenly, glowing specks of light began to swirl in front of him, leaving the young man completely baffled until a screen suddenly popped up with strange messages. Tom stared at this strange new technology, unable to stop himself from wondering exactly what it was. The system declared that this was the wizard's world, where one ruler commands everything. From this day forward, our hero must walk the world as Mordvarars. When he saw it, the boy realized those words were the title of the book he'd read just the night before. Mord is just a supporting player, but the system warns that if he dies, Taze will die too while the boy struggles to make sense of it. Our hero starts to take in all the chaos, nodding and admitting that this is real. Staring at his legs, The boy couldn't believe what he was seeing and couldn't decide if it was real. Townin keeps moving his legs, saying that before he couldn't feel them at all, but now he can move them. Now the boy could stand, and his new body was built like an athlete. His sweat won't stop, and he can almost feel the ground under his feet and sense everything happening around him. The system flickers back into view right in front of Tessa, telling him it's pulling up some data. Suddenly, our hero jumps, and a flood of facts, the face of Mord, and every moment from the story rush into his mind. As the boy presses his hands to his head, feeling every memory of Mord flood his mind, he realizes with desperation that he can now see the life Mord led and how that story ended in the book. Mord Burners is a son of the strange Vera family and a warrior destined to grow incredibly powerful in the future. He's the unwanted son of the family's terrifyingly powerful boss, a threat so big that even if Aiden and his team join forces against Mord, they might still lose. Just as Mord was deep in his mind control ritual, the hero and his friends jumped in and caught him off guard. In the end, he's just a supporting player who wonders why he ever became Mord. A screen flickers back into view, telling him that Tan must fix the world's terrible ending, and finally, his wish comes true. Seeing the word wish on the page, he gets so excited because he knows he can make it do amazing things. Our hero hesitates, unsure if his dream will come true or if it's a trick, and since the system talks about a dark fate, he thinks the hologram must be talking about the novel's sad ending. The system wants Tism to save the world from Aiden, who plans to destroy it later, so the protagonist needs to think hard about what to do next. The young man thinks he must be dreaming because his old life has worn him out. T remembers his past life, where he was trapped in a wheelchair and hated how every single day felt exactly the same. If this was just a dream, he didn't want to wake up and didn't care if it was a silly joke or not. The boy, already thinking hard about what he wanted, said he wished his body could go back to how it was before the crash. He wasn't satisfied with just that, not by a long shot. The young man pauses to remember the system's request, and as he thinks about the wizard who rules the world, he realizes he already knows everything about the novel. Besides all of Moore's strength and skill, fixing this broken fate was so worth trying as long as his wish could come true. Finally, our hero declares that he won't just try, because no matter what happens, he will succeed. The story of Moorer keeps going, revealing he's a bastard son of the Arctic Veerer's bloodline. The boy lived a hard life because his mother died just a few days after he was born, and he never knew who she was. Soon everyone started calling the young man the Cursed One, the boy who killed his own mother and lived in shame, too weak to stand up to the cruel words and pressure of others. Next, we watch Morn from years ago, head bowed as nobles hurl insults at him. It wasn't that he was weak or couldn't fight. It was that the guilt of killing his own mother burned him from the inside, yet many things were about to change the poor boy's life forever. When they hit 15, those born into the Veerer family finally wake up their special powers. They call this transformation the awakening of divine blood, a process so painful it feels like setting the body on fire. Yet those who survive the agony are granted incredible power. But if you weren't truly born of the Archhughes family, your odds of walking away from the blood awakening were worse than 5 out of 10. Mord was unlike anyone else. After the new blood woke up, he became incredibly strong with powers far beyond what anyone else had. Tong clutches the letter in his mind, a message saying that if he makes it through his 15th birthday, he must head to the Vera family's main house. Our protagonist tells us that Mord finally read his mother's last letter and then set off to find the Archix family. He agreed to take the test to earn his father's approval, a memory of Tez song now living in Morn's mind, leading the boy to believe he arrived at the Vera's house yesterday for it. The boy thinks Morn is just a supporting character while Arctic Verners is the villain, so he says he knows a lot about that family. Since this family already has many direct descendants, they would likely despise and reject Moore, the illegitimate son, rather than accepting him. Raising herself without parents filled the supporting character with a burning need to be seen as the Archduke's true daughter. But his father only saw him as a tool, and the boy's new strength from awakening was so great that even the protagonist would struggle to beat him in a fight. Since the supporting character hadn't shown all his power in the novel, Tong saw this test as a chance to unlock his new body's true potential. But just as he focused on that, a bearded man walked in, called out to our protagonist, and asked if the boy had forgotten what day it was. Zhang thinks that, based on Moore's memories, this guy is an instructor named Todd, who will personally run his test. Todd, a muscular man with short hair, a beard, and battle scars, loomed over the boy and demanded to know why he was standing still. The boy thought the man looked like a real instructor with muscles everywhere, so he walked up and asked if his name was Todd. For some reason, the man felt the whole situation was strange, wondering to himself that the boy seemed different from yesterday, as if his personality had changed. Todd watches the boy and thinks his stare has changed, but he decides it was just in his head. Todd asked more if the young man forgot about the test he was supposed to take, but Veer snapped back, asking what kind of test it was since he didn't remember. The soldier says this is a test to see how far the boy can go, and since he sees the young man is strong, he assumes he already knows how to fight. Sweating from the stress, Tiz soon realizes he's barely gotten used to his new body and already has to fight. Thinking he had to fight to stay alive, the protagonist was actually thrilled, seeing the battle as his chance to win. Feeling nervous about what was coming up, Tong says he wants to try out his new powers, and this is his first real chance to do it. Soon enough, the boy follows Todd deeper into the woods. The instructor wondered if we had forgotten what he said yesterday, but Mort was confused until Todd explained that he'd already told the boy not to claim he was Archic's son, and we quickly nodded that we understood. Warren thought Todd was talking about the secret rules for outcasts, but following them made no sense when rumors were already flying everywhere. Whispers say the Archduke already met Moore, and soon everyone will find out which bad seed will become an official warrior. Todd walks up to the group of strong students, letting them know he's arrived and seeing that everyone is already gathered. Werner Dar watches in silence, while another student wonders if the newcomer they are eyeing is the one chosen to be tested that day. Meanwhile, Morn suspects the other students look far too young to be regular trainees, so they must be secret fighters. Todd remarks that he assumed our hero knew how to fight, noting that Veerer's style is unlike that of ordinary warriors. The young man looks grave as he explains that a Werner only picks up weapons when they aren't trained or ready. Once they are trained, they stop relying on ordinary weapons and gain something truly amazing. And in this family tradition, they battle by using only their own bodies, hands, and special powers. Todd agrees, explaining that while those without Werner's blood rely on weapons, others simply learn how to fight. War believed he already knew the truth, knowing that the Verer family, the continent's greatest warriors, earned their fame purely through fighting with their own hands. Our hero starts to believe it's impossible. Yet he realizes that no weapon in the world can ever beat the strength of the Veerers, no matter who made it. Tada explains that the test will show which team the warriors join and how they will train, then asks a student named Vince if he is ready. Vince nods, says he is prepared, and steps toward the center of the training area. Todd tells Moore to fight Vince, making it clear that the winner decides the boy's future, and proving he has Werner blood is the only way to do it. The two boys lock eyes in silence, and Vince starts to study his opponent. Vince wonders if the young man is truly 15, since his face really does look that young. Yet the boy's massive size felt strange, so Vince laughed at him and dared him to fight just to see who his father was. Tong tells himself that other scoundrels are there with Mord, and since his father wasn't the only one who went astray, he knows he must focus on fighting for freedom through raw power, which rules that world. Even though a quiet life far away would be nice, he can't stay back because he knows what that future holds. Bernard steps into a fighting pose and declares that he must prove his skills right here in front of everyone. Our hero suddenly dashes at the blonde boy, fists raised to throw a punch. Vince barely dodges Vince's surprise hook, stunned by how fast the move came. The boy broke out in a sweat, realizing he didn't know how to fight as well as he thought, but then Tezen started spinning and proved the boy was tougher and quicker than he expected, making his old boxing lessons finally count. He learned that fighting move just to kill time, but it was better than nothing, so, with a quick spin, the boy kicked his opponent, Vince. The blonde blocks the hit with his guard, but the force throws him flying backward until he barely manages to stop himself. Feeling annoyed, the boy finally admits that Moore was a master fighter and gets back to his feet. The young man told our hero that he was lying about not knowing how to fight and was probably just trying to trick him. But Tong doesn't seem to get it and insists that there is no reason to lie. Even so, Vince remains convinced that Moore was lying, pointing to his body language as proof. Mort surprises everyone by saying he just copied what others did, which makes the blonde boy suddenly very angry. Suddenly, he lunges at his foe, hurling a blast of green energy that leaves our hero stunned. One of Vince's half-brothers yells that he shouldn't be using mana and tells him to quit, but the instructor cuts in and orders them to keep fighting. Even though the student is scared for our hero's life, the instructor insists they just watch the two fight. Mort is shocked to see his rival using magic to fight back. Yet the young man steps forward into a fighting stance without any hesitation. Vince, seething with anger, demanded to know how that jerk dared to speak to him that way. The young man declared that from now on he wouldn't hold back, and our hero was about to learn a lesson he might finally be glad for. Even with Vince pouring his magic into a punch, Mort just slips right out of the way. Vince stood frozen in shock and worry, unable to understand how that boy dodged the blow or why a beginner like him possessed such amazing skill. Our hero was just about to speak, but Vince kept pressing him about how that scoundrel could so easily guess mana moves and future turns. So the boy finished his thought by asking if it was now his turn while starting to swirl mana particles around his hand. Then he vanished suddenly, leaving Vince shocked because despite years of training in mana combat, he found himself struggling against such a novice. Right then, Vera lands a heavy punch right to Vince's stomach, and the force makes Vince wince in pain. Vince loses consciousness and is flung across the room with almost no effort. Everyone from the bad guys to the instructor stares in shock at the scene, unable to believe their eyes. Todd thought he had fooled himself into thinking the kid was just a beginner, but that warrior, Vince, knocked him right out of the sky. Watching Moore walk away, the instructor told everyone what an amazing and incredible kid he was. After beating his opponent so badly that the boy couldn't fight back, our hero starts walking toward him as he lies on the ground. Moore steps right up to Vince and just stares at him without speaking for a long time. The boy realized that missing Vince's final blow would have been a disaster, and he finally understood how to use his power. But the blonde guy sitting on the ground starts moving his hands, squeezing them into tight fists. Moore shifts into a fighting pose and asks the blonde if he can still stand after taking such a hit, proving that true warriors are different. Tesson sees that Vince is almost out, but his rival is about to make a move, and the boy is shocked by how hard Vince is fighting. One student asks his teacher how Vince got knocked out in one hit by a beginner, and everyone is curious about where that kid came from. He looked back at his instructor and admitted that he couldn't control his strength, so he was scared he might kill his opponent if they kept fighting. Todd drifts into thought, reminding us that back then Morn was just a student while he was the instructor. The man believes an instructor exists only to find the limits of every student, and that no student should ever be allowed to beat the person testing them. But he didn't know what would happen if those two ever fought. So to stop the mess, Todd calls a halt to the fight, and then another student steps forward to help Vince get back on his feet. The annoyed instructor walked over to question the boy about his lie, but Moore just stood there, totally confused by what he heard. Todd noted that while the boy said he'd never learned to fight, the fight he just watched proved him wrong. Moore admits he never learned how to fight and never lied about it. The instructor insists he can't believe it, because no one who has never trained in mana combat could suddenly use those powers in a fight. Verars tries to cover his mistake by claiming he didn't realize the mana was there, because he can only use it when he's completely furious and he truly didn't know what it was. Todd didn't buy the excuse and told the boy that no one, not even an instructor with decades of experience, will be fooled by just an excuse. Trying hard not to show who he really was, the boy starts telling Todd about his strange blood change and everything that happened. They told us that Mord was already using his magic before he woke up, which is why he is so talented. In the grand battle for the sky, Vernars, the god of combat, stands against Erita, the goddess of the heavens. Mord carries the blood of two gods inside him. This special mix made the boy feel like a miracle, giving him a blessed gift in his genes, yet he didn't get even a shred of proper training until he turned 15. But in just 7 years, he grew stronger than Archik Vern and surpassed the most powerful successor to the god of combat. And that's how our tale changed. After making up a convincing excuse that was half the truth, Todd started to believe it himself, insisting that if it were real, the boy was truly a monster of talent. The instructor asked the boy if he knew who Vince was, and the boy admitted he didn't have a clue since he'd never met the blonde before. Vince was a Vera warrior trained from childhood and who survived a grueling series of trials. And despite everything, a rookie like Moore had still managed to beat him just like that. Todd set that aside and said our hero had somehow scored 200 points to pass a test worth only 100, leaving us wondering what he would do next. The boy stood confused and helpless because the instructor never told him what to do. Moore admitted he still didn't understand the test's purpose, so his instructor explained that it was meant to find out exactly how strong he had become. Archie Verdar's family has 3 main ranks for their warriors. Once you've mastered each level, you get to move on to the next one. Once you conquer the final level, you earn the title of True Warrior. The real problem was that these tests were so hard that many thought they were impossible, yet Ward knew exactly what he was talking about. The boy asked his instructor, Todd, if he could start him at the very first level, leaving the man utterly baffled. Moore decided he had to learn mana combat from the ground up and wondered if the second level would teach him those basics too. Todd said no to their request, but our hero asked if he could move up levels whenever he earned them, and Todd, still confused by this new idea, agreed. Tong stayed confident and chose to begin at the very first level, even though he had many other options. Todd just stared at the boy, thinking he was for real, and since he was a bastard, he figured this was his only way out. The man spun around, nodding in agreement that he couldn't just give the boy special favors just because he beat a warrior. Just before we left, the instructor said the day's lessons were done and that he'd send someone to teach us the first level to our hero tomorrow. Lying in one of the rooms, the boy started to think the test had been super easy. Ta wondered if Moore had to go through everything Ta was feeling right now, since the book never explained how Moore became Archduke Vare's trump card. But it all made sense now, since the boy was just a side character in the story and there was no need to dig into his past. The boy only recalled that the Archduke of Varars pushed Moore to his breaking point, twisting his mind so the man could be used as a living weapon. The boy remembered how Morn was always beaten as a kid and never fought back, so he guessed that in his past life, this supporting character must have been hurt and stuck at the very first level. Overwhelmed by a flood of memories and thoughts, the boy finally realized why he had taken over Moore's body. Once known as Taum, he wasn't a famous figure, but he never let injustice go unanswered. In the story, Moore lived a totally different life that was the exact opposite of his real one. The boy stood up and started walking towards something in the room, imagining that he was saving the world from destruction, a mission that meant stopping the story's main character, the supreme god or wizard who collects the world's puzzle pieces, each holding a piece of its very soul. Just as the title promised, the mighty wizard Idon collects all the pieces to become a power that rules the whole world. But eventually, the corruption took hold of him, and he turned his hand against the world, bringing ruin to everyone in it. Idon didn't just kill his enemies. He also turned on his own allies, leading a brutal fight to become the world's ultimate destroyer. The next morning, as the sun rose, the boy vowed to stop Aiden at any cost, knowing this might be Taesung's final chance to live, and that Aiden would soon fade away as Mord. The Werner family rules over the Archduchy of Verers and is famous all over that world. The castle of Werner, which is the beating heart of the nation, is just as lavish and grand as any other royal fortress. What makes it truly unique is the gigantic warrior training center just outside the castle in the third region. As the carriage races toward its destination, someone tells the hero that from now on, he'll be stuck sleeping in the basement dorm. Mort figured the training center was bigger than any university in his world, but that was the smallest surprise of all. Suddenly, the sharp clash of swords nearby made our boy snap to attention. The person next to him says this is likely the third training level, and Mort wonders if the noise they just heard really came from a group of trainees. After getting a yes, the boy realizes that even though these people started as second-level trainees, they clearly pushed past the limits of humans. Verer's warriors are famous for mixing different powers together into a single, mighty force. The very man who taught Murad just said they'll reach the third region soon, where the boy's instructor is waiting for him. After stepping off the carriage, he thanks his driver, then turns to see that the first-level instructor is a huge man standing right beside him. A big, muscular man with black hair introduces himself as the level 1 instructor and tells Hayes and the beginner to call him Instructor Hayes. Moore follows the order to call out the name, and right after, the instructor asks if the boy is Moore and guesses he must have failed the test badly to be there. The bastard shocks the instructor by saying he beat Vince in the first test, making Hayes wonder if he really fought a warrior. After getting the word, the man can't believe it and wonders how the young man ended up there. Moore reasons that since everyone will soon find out, there's no point in hiding it, and he admits he never learned how to fight, which is exactly why he came here to learn the basics. Still stunned by what he'd heard, the instructor nods, asks the boy to follow, and leads him toward the battle center while explaining that he mustn't distract the people training there. The boy thinks this might just be the first level, but the instructor has to be tough because he's training people to become Werner's warriors. As soon as they arrive, they spot a bunch of strong kids, and the instructor shows the new trainee, Mord, to everyone. The man claims Morn is just a beginner, and as our hero sweats, he can't believe this hard level is meant for kids. He's starting to think he should have just gone straight to the third level, and if he could change it now, he would. Hayes wondered if the boy had never learned how to fight with magic, but Verers explained that he hadn't, yet for some reason, the boy could still use it. The instructor says that since he's already blessed by the divine blood awakening, he is no man at all, so whatever he's about to teach will be incredibly easy. Hayes starts outlining steps the boy likely already knows, but the very last thing he must learn is how to control his mana and sharpen his senses. Our hero asks if he needs to learn the basics of fighting, and the instructor replies that if the boy stays long enough, he'll make it happen, but he guesses the boy wouldn't want that. Verars gets so scared he tells them to forget it, but the instructor says he gets it. The man says he'll teach the boy a few things now, but soon he'll have to learn everything himself because at the second level, the instructor will only help with the stuff he's really bad at. Word believes he must start from the very beginning to truly master his power, knowing that underestimating himself on the first level is a mistake he won't make. The kids were stunned, asking how a beginner could do that after only 10 minutes of practice. One kid notices the boy glowing with a blue light and thinks his magic is even stronger than the instructor's own. He stands tall and demands to know if that is all, or if he must learn more, even as more keeps pressing an overwhelming weight upon him. Right away, scared by everything, the instructor says he's already passed the first level, and the boy wonders if that's all there is. Now, as he moves to the second level, the boy realizes that the tough physical lessons here split into two smaller parts. First, build a strong body so you won't get hurt even if a car runs over you. The next stage is to boost your powers so you can break past your normal limits, just as he shows by punching a wall. The only thing left to see after the hit is the hole the boy made, and he also says that learning to reinforce things with your body is a really hard skill. He turns to his new second-level instructor and says all that remains is the practical test, but the instructor believes the boy has already passed it. The man tells the boy he's done enough and that he'll start the third level tomorrow. The instructor warns that while the second level is easy, the third will be brutally hard because an untrained boy from the Virus bloodline, who looks serious but knows no fighting skills, must face powerful students relying only on his instincts. The young man realizes he's still learning, and Hayes only sent him down to the second level because he was hiding his true strength. The instructor places a hand on Moore's shoulder to say that while raw strength will get you to the second level, reaching the third level as a true warrior will be no easy task. Word guessed the third level would be tough, but he couldn't wait to meet the folks with the divine blood waking up. By dawn the next morning, we spotted the quarters where the level 3 fighters live. Word is spreading that Mord, who carries Vera's blood, managed to sneak through 2 dangerous levels in just 2 days. Fun, a red-haired young man with the same special bloodline, says that people just want to grab the Archic's attention like our protagonist. He gives a serious look that screams trouble and declares he will prove his wrath, showing that rankings really matter in a Vera's bloodline. The red-haired boy is told the new arrival has come, and Sumorg shows up, wondering why he didn't just start there, while Fun rushes over to the brown-haired boy to ask if he's the novice, only for Morg to reply by asking who he is. The boy claimed he was the captain of the second class, and Fun, our hero, secretly believed this stranger was another of the Virus blood, just like himself. Moore reveals he belongs to that bloodline and stands on the third level before introducing himself, while Vera boasts with arrogance that he doesn't know how long he'll remain there. Taking the words as an insult, Fun gets angry and his power leaks out as he asks if we're just joking around. Moore waves him off, saying he wouldn't have shown up if he thought it was just a joke, which only makes Fun angrier. Vera tells Fun to calm down since he isn't feeling like fighting, but the boy snaps back that it's expected of someone from that bloodline, and when Mort admits he won't be intimidated by a weakling's aura, it only makes his opponent even angrier. The boy starts glowing with a reddish light in his hand as he asks Morn if the world will just bow to him because he woke up. With Fun's aura spilling out and his eyes burning red, he is so consumed by rage that he can only think about beating and finishing off that rookie. Other students started laughing at the newcomer, claiming that no one could stop Fun and that the boy would surely die unless an instructor rushed in to end the fight. Fun tells Moore he won't hold back because our hero shares the same Vera blood. Then the red-haired boy dashes forward to strike, grabbing the young man's head to end the fight instantly. Fueled by blind rage, he vows to make the place pay for its insults and teach them a hard lesson about the real world. But before he can act, a huge crash erupts and a thick cloud of dust covers everyone's eyes. The friend who was with Fun earlier said the power was monstrous and that the novice was very unlucky to run into Fian, the leader there, but he hoped Mord would survive. As the smoke fades, you can see one person standing over another who has fallen to their knees after taking a heavy hit. For some reason, every other student is frozen in shock, watching someone shake like a leaf after getting hit hard. The lone man stood frozen in shock, baffled because he had assumed Fun was powerful enough to block his blow. As he watches Fun bleed from the nose and mouth while lying on the ground, he says that Fun was nothing more than a loud bully who never had any real dignity. Fun wipes the blood from his mouth, defeated and crushed by the loss of his pride. The young man stood up, shaking from the hit, and swore at our hero, saying he only got lucky. The boy stood tall and declared that it wasn't luck at all, but simply because his opponent was too weak to fight back. Once more, Fun releases all his power and lunges forward to finish the fight and show he is truly strong. Seeing his chance, Fien lunged in a blind rage, but Mort effortlessly dodged the furious strike. He grabs this chance to whirl around, springing up behind Fun with a kick just like he landed on Vince before. The boy slaps Mana onto his foot, kicks Fun high into the air, and sends him crashing down to the ground again and again. After tumbling to a halt against a wall, Fun is suddenly engulfed by a rising cloud of dust kicked up from the crash. Seeing his opponent lying unconscious, Mord realizes he might have gone too hard, especially since he didn't expect the boy, leader of the third-level Vera's warriors, to be so weak. He gazed at his hands and realized his blow was powerful because he had mastered the simple mana skills from the first and second levels. A worried friend wakes Finn up and rushes to help him stand. But the warrior refuses to quit, and fueled by his humiliation, he shoves his friend aside and shouts that the fight isn't finished. Mord sneered at the boy, noting with disgust and pity that the kid had passed out and stayed that way for roughly 10 seconds. Even though everything is against him, Finn refuses to admit he was wrong, claiming Mord only hit him because he had his guard down, which is exactly why he took the blow. Our hero mocks his opponent, calling it pathetic to let his guard down when facing someone destined to become a warrior. Finn roared with all his anger and strength, shouting that even if his enemy could talk, it didn't mean they could say whatever they wanted. So a red aura wraps around the young man and the students, who realize with panic that Finn has awakened his powers and scream for Mort to run, or he will die. But Mort stands firm, convinced that Finn must have triggered the divine blood awakening. But he was handling that divine blood all wrong, which made perfect sense since the boy was an illegitimate child without any pure blood in him. In the middle of the mess, someone started walking up to the two young guys to ask what was going on and try to figure out what was happening. An old teacher watched as students named him the third-level instructor while explaining that a fight had just begun between Fun and a beginner. Watching the scene, the elder stayed quiet until his student asked if they should stop the pair, to which the old man simply said, "Wait here and do nothing." The elder realized Finn was nearly as strong as a real warrior, but had never been tested, so now was his chance to find out. Watching him more closely, he figured the boy must be the Veerer's child who climbed to the third level that day, so if a kid died, it wouldn't be such a big deal. Red electricity surged through Fun's body as he grinned with pure evil and anger, vowing that Mauer would pay with his life. Mord stared in shock at his opponent, unable to believe that someone could wield such terrifying power. Fighting clasped his hands together and leaped toward Mord, unleashing a barrage of lightning bolts from below to strike him. Veerer saw the attack coming and guessed that an advanced technique was using the body or a weapon as a vessel to create a powerful magical form. Fian slammed onto the ground with a body impulse named Body Impulse, narrowly missing Mord, who barely dodged, leaving a massive crack and rumble in the earth behind Tan, who now knew he couldn't afford to get hit by such a powerful blow. With his newfound power, Finn rushed toward the hero and warned him not to try running away. Once more, he whipped up a storm of lightning bolts in his hands and rushed the boy to end his life for all the disrespect he had shown. Before Finn could even blink, a punch landed hard on his face, leaving him completely stunned. Blood gushed from Frian's nose again, leaving him stunned by such a sudden blow, yet his will to fight burned brighter than ever. A storm of attacks rained down on Mordor, yet the young man danced through them all, slipping past each blow and striking back with perfect timing. Even though his new power let him take more hits, Mord dodged every punch from Fun without even tapping into his divine blood. The students saw that the beginner wasn't getting hit, but they also noticed that Mord's attacks seemed to do nothing to Fun, who was holding strong. But the elder instructor noticed something was wrong, seeing that the red-haired boy was truly suffering and slowly giving himself up in the fight. The red-haired boy grew so tired that the old man saw Fun's strong urge fading away. Mord said it was time to get serious, so he switched his plan and let Veerer charge while his enemy tried to land a blow. With a sudden punch to Fun's stomach, the boy caught him off guard and left him no time to react. As soon as he got hit, Fun began to ache and more tomato juice poured from his mouth. The boy flew backward once more while Mord stayed ready to fight, apologizing for trying to hold back, but clearly having hit too hard. After shaking off the punch, Fine furiously told Mord to shut up, calling him a coward for running away and setting traps. But Taum just let Fun's threats fuel his anger. He declared with a bold voice that he was done dodging and that he had grown tired of holding back, so now that Fan was getting too close, he would end it all. Fun believed he had tricked the boy into walking right into his trap. He then charged at his enemy one more time, telling Mord not to regret his loss after being defeated. For some reason, the boy just stood there watching the big punch come right at him, doing nothing to move out of the way just like he promised. The force of the blow blasted mana particles into the air, filling the area with a brilliant flash of light. As soon as their sight returned, they spotted Mord gripping Fun's arm. The boy told his opponent that brute force won't win against a stronger enemy, which is why all of Fun's attacks failed against the mighty Mord. Mord also called upon a power in his hand, glowing with a blue light, and declared that this was a great lesson. Fun, driven by desperation, knows that someone acting on impulse will always beat someone who doesn't, and that's just common sense. But this guy, Morin, had changed everything. The red-haired boy's final sight was a punch aimed right at his belly, and Finn knew right then that the boy had no chance of winning. Once more, he was knocked back and winced in pain, only for the boy to roll across the floor, already beaten. Finally, he bumps right into the wall and holds up his hand like he wants to say something. Before he can speak, he drops unconscious from the heavy blows, leaving the shocked instructor to wonder how a bastard child like Moore could defeat Fun without even using his special power. Watching the scene, he mutters that while he has trained many Virers, he has never seen a bastard child so talented. Moore had finally closed the distance between himself and his rival, and when Moore asked if anyone else wanted to go, the instructor stepped in to say that this 15-year-old boy was already so strong he was nothing short of a monster. Daisley starts to leave, telling his students to rush Fun to the medical center while one of them agrees, and he worries that if he doesn't act now, everything will fall apart. No matter how skilled Mort becomes, he'll always be seen as the kid born out of wedlock. The old man decides he must find a way to control the boy, even if he has to treat him like a tiny puppet. Our protagonist tells us that Fun got badly hurt in the fight yesterday, and now has to stay at the medical center. The boy fell into a coma from the hits he took, and still hasn't woken up. As a result, Moore was sent alone to his cell for 4 days, where he passed the time by reading a book on fighting tactics. Closing his book, the boy notes that this theoretical combat test was easy for him since his past life's postgraduate studies made the theory no problem at all. The boy started stretching, saying that staying inside all day was boring, so he was going out to practice his mana fighting skills. A mysterious stranger steps in to tell Moore that he's already caused trouble in the 3rd level training area. As our hero lifts his eyes, he realizes the stranger is Todd, so he turns to his teacher to ask why the Archduke is there, and the man replies that the Archduke has summoned him. Our hero is puzzled why a big shot wants to meet him, but the man just says to keep going until he arrives at the spot, and he'll know then. Todd also notes that the boy doesn't need to change clothes since the Archduke doesn't expect him to know noble etiquette, so he's fine just as he is. Our hero nods along, convinced that the book's magic users don't care about polite manners, so he and his friends head out right away. Todd says that rumors are flying about the boy, who finished the 1st and 2nd levels much easier than he expected. He also notes that he thought the boy was very smart and is sure others agree. Moore is confused by his instructor, who explains that everything they did was just a trick to get the Archduke's attention. Moore, to everyone's surprise, refused to trade his morals for the Archduke's attention, pointing out that if he truly craved power, he could have easily become a mighty warrior instead. Todd believes the boy is right, and that this path is far better than everything he has done so far. He then tells his student that the Archduke got a report on what happened and got very interested. Tessin figured that beating a Werner would definitely catch the Duke's eye, so he wasn't surprised when it happened. Todd tells the boy not to mess up as they head toward the Archduke's training ground. Once they stepped off the carriage, the two of them saw a battle happening just nearby. Our hero's father stands protected by a glowing pink shield as warriors charge at him, and he stares at a long-haired, bearded giant named Arkugverus, feeling the powerful energy radiating from him. The warriors around Virers surge forward to smash his shield, and everyone hits it at once. Even though cracks start to show, no one ever manages to snap it in half. The Archduke nods to his arrived guest, declares it's time, and gets right to work. A swirling red ball of magic begins to take shape in his hand, pulling all the energy around it into itself. Suddenly, the tiny marble in Virer's hand instantly grows into a giant soccer ball. The huge sphere quickly turns into a mighty magic ball that starts pulling everything nearby toward itself. For some reason, Ward recognizes the power as soon as he sees it, and Virer readies his finishing move. The boy explains that this massive technique soaks up any physical or magical hit and blasts it back as a shockwave, causing the giant energy sphere in Virer's hand to shrink and fly toward his enemies like a sudden burst. The explosion carves a huge hole in the wall and throws every other enemy backward in a cloud of smoke. Seeing this, the boy guessed that his father Virars is still tweaking the Reflector, the god of combat's special ability. Once the man launches his attack, he realizes it's still not enough, and our hero sees that even in its unfinished form, the power is already terrifyingly strong. Turning to face the instructor and his son, the Archduke apologizes for making them wait, and the two quickly kneel to bow before the Lord. The man walked over, sighed with sadness, and told the boy that since he had called him over, he didn't need to stand on formalities and could simply stand up. Standing before his son like a giant, the man told him he'd heard about the boy's amazing feats at the training grounds. He gently holds his son's chin and asks for his mother's name, and the boy replies that her name is Ray. The man says he remembers her, notices that the young man looks more like his mother than his father, and then asks if he has already awakened his blood power. Werner also mentions that he heard Moore defeated an impulse user using only body reinforcement and wanted to see just how strong his son was, But suddenly the arch shouts for someone named Kestner, and a young man appears behind him addressing him as Your Majesty. The protagonist's father insists that Kestner must fight Mordor, but the boy wonders if it is truly necessary to battle a young man. Hearing this, the man explains that the newcomer is his son who wants to test his strength, so he asks his subordinate not to hold back against the boy, but when looking at his opponent, Morn realizes he is one of the men who trained with the Archduke. Kestner told the boy to follow him to the fighting ring, and said he could pick whatever weapon he wanted, promising to wait right there until the young man made his choice. But Taeyong shakes his head and says he doesn't need one. Shifting into a fighting stance, Morn admits he never learned to use a weapon, so he'll rely only on his fists. Kestner lets out a small chuckle, underestimating the boy, and asks if he's really serious. Right away, he leaps at Morn to fight and find out what the boy is really made of. He winds up and throws a punch at the boy, but the young man slips right out of the way. Mor's mind tells him the rival is incredibly fast, just like anyone close to the Archduke should be, while Nur gets excited watching the boy dodge without even using any mana. Mor gets hammered by a hail of blows and realizes too late that this fighter is way stronger than Vince and Fun. After a barrage of hits, the boy is knocked backward and only just keeps from falling over, but he is still in the fight. Nur ignites his blazing aura, praising our hero for never holding back, even when backed into a corner. Mor begins to sweat from the intense heat he feels, guessing that his opponent is pouring mana into his attacks, and judging by that power, he must be from the Virur's bloodline. Realizing he's never fought with everything he had before, the boy gathers his full power as his opponent approaches, deciding to give it all since this is an Archduke's and Terrage fighter he can't hold back against. Suddenly, a bright blue light starts glowing all over Ward's body. The two super strong fighters met in a wild jungle battle, their glowing powers crashing together. The Arch was stunned by what he saw, while Kestner couldn't believe it was just an apprentice's magic. Tai-sun believed Mor could never reach his full potential because he grew up being told he was the cursed one who killed his own mother. The boy probably never got to unleash his full strength because the heavy guilt on his shoulders held him back. Now standing ready for battle, the current Mord decides this time will be different, driven by the memory of the Mord who never got to unleash his true power. Taeyong stands firm with a serious look, taunting Kestner to come and fight him. Castor laughs, confirms it, and then explodes into a furious charge at Mord, ready to teach him a lesson. Mord holds up his arms to block the hit, keeping it from hitting his face. Nur respects his opponent and knows why the Archduke cares about the boy now that the rumors are gone, but that understanding meant nothing because the man presses his fist against our hero's guard and then strikes with a move we don't know. Again, Mord is knocked backward, puzzled because he was sure he blocked the blow, so he guesses there must be a trick that doubles the force of the attack. Kestner won't let him catch his breath, telling the boy he has much more to learn before lunging forward to end the fight. Before Mor could even realize how much stronger she was, a huge punch hit him right in the stomach. The boy gets slammed hard into the wall from the punch, spitting out saliva from the impact. Kestner grins slightly and warns the boy that since he hasn't even begun, he'd better not disappoint him. As the dust settles, the Archduke's knight sneers, asking if that was all we had to offer. Still in pain from the attack, the young man struggles to rise and realizes the gap between them is huge, even before the man unleashes his power. As Morn pushes himself up, he almost considers tapping into his special blood power, but he stops himself, knowing his enemy would do the exact same thing if he gave into it. Kestner grew annoyed, telling the boy he was worrying too much. Morn stays quiet, groaning as he wipes blood from his mouth after the hit. When silence falls, Kestner's irritation boils over, and he threatens to force the boy into a fight he's not ready for, charging forward again. Nur sees the young man ready to fight for real, so our hero raises his hand to strike. But the man slips away so fast that the boy crashes his fist into the dirt. Feeling thrilled by the fight, Mud declares this is exactly what he wanted and leaps back into the battle, deciding that getting beaten up was boring, so he'll now show just how powerful he can be with punches that are too fast to even see. Kestner avoids the hit and teases the boy for moving too much without trying to land a real punch. From just below, the man notes that the young man is talented but still a beginner in fighting as he starts to collect magic power in his hand. The man leaps at his opponent with a fierce attack, but he only manages to strike his forearm. Kestner said he thought the boy was done defending himself. Mor replies that he expected this move, then blasts his opponent's weak arm with a powerful surge of magic energy. Kestner is stunned to discover that the hit on his arm is the very same move he used before, a deadly double attack. The man realized his opponent didn't just block his attack on purpose, but mirrored his move so fast it was almost too quick to see. Kestner's fists clench in rage as he realizes the boy copied his double strike too quickly. A golden glow crackles with lightning bolts from his hand as he admits he's growing more impressed and curious about our hero. And now Moore must give everything he has. Watching his opponent's reckless moves make him wonder if the other is finally unleashing their true power. But Archuk suddenly stops the fight and tells them to get apart, which really shocks Kessner. The elder tells his subordinate that they've tested Moore's strength enough with what they just did. He starts walking toward his son, amazed to see him reach such a high level just after his blood has awakened. Just as his pride peaks, the Archduke interrupts to reveal he wants to see something else and begins gathering a burst of power in his hand. The protagonist realizes the device is an impulse sphere and can't help but wonder why his dad would use it now. Without hesitation, the boy thrusts his hands forward to take the blow and save his life. The boy yells at Virus in his head and wonders if his body can take the hit. Determined to go further than ever before, the young man promises to endure the pain with his own strength, refusing to tap into his hidden power. Thinking back to his fight with Fine, the young man realizes he only survived because he was stronger, but that won't help him now. But if he mastered his power, he could block it, and instantly, the boy summoned a white light in his hand to stop the attack. His father smiles, leaving Todd shocked and insisting it can't be true since our hero just went through their blood awakening. Watching the blue energy surge from his student, the instructor wonders how the boy already knows how to use it. Mort stares at his own hand and realizes his body is far more powerful than he thought, since he just saw someone use an ability and instantly copied it himself. The Archuk is thrilled, claiming this is what his kind expect, but Mort gets angry, remembering that this man just uses people. Virus, beaming with pride, promises a reward to his son for passing the test and asks what he wants. The nobleman told the boy he could ask for a fortune beyond dreaming, a wise teacher to guide him, or anything at all. Our protagonist was stunned by the unexpected turn, but instantly knew exactly what to ask for. She must gather the world's broken pieces before Edan does, or the world will fall apart. The boy says he doesn't want those small things, so his father asks what he truly desires. To everyone's surprise, Moore declares he wants to challenge the tomb's god of combat. Tame points out that the book mentions places known as dungeons. They are full of monsters and danger. The dungeons here are strange because they wear marks where this world bleeds into another, forming right at the places where the two realities overlap. Almost every dungeon touches the demon realm, but the tomb of the combat god Varars is special because it's where he was made, sits above another world, and holds a broken piece of reality. When he hears what his son asks for, the whole art troupe goes dead serious and stays quiet for a few seconds. He rests his hand on his chin, lost in thought, while our hero worries he might have asked for too much too soon. His father asks the boy why he wants to go there, since he can't see any good reason for it. The boy insists he wants to see with his own eyes the source of the fighting god's power he gained when he woke up, since he heard rumors of it lingering in that place. Nessner, who fought the boy earlier, says he's more immature than anyone else who ever thought about it. He says that the warrior god's tomb is where the big coming-of-age ceremony happens for his direct family. He is daring the rightful family to fight by saying a bastard has no place there. Suddenly Varars says yes, and Kessner wonders why his master would allow it, but the Archduke simply knows exactly what's on his subordinate's mind. He says that every generation has seen non-bloodline warriors join dungeon expeditions. Virus asks his boss if he wants to come along too, but the man stays quiet, and Virus believes Kessner suffered a hard life just for being born out of wedlock, while he's certain both Mort and Kessner are hungry for the same special treatment. But he tells our hero that the boy is still too young to leave, promising him a second chance once he earns the title of official warrior. With fists clenched, Mort thinks that becoming an official warrior isn't too hard, but he needs to move faster than the novel's hero, Aiden, and grab the fragment from the god of combat's tomb. The boy confidently tells his father he understands and hopes for a bright future, while Kessner, who just fought our hero, watches them leave in silence before asking his master if the boy's name is Moore. But ignoring his question and surprising him, Vera asks what he thought of the boy, especially since he had fought against him. The man said Moore must have been holding back because he was sure the boy hadn't fought with all his heart. Vera's hearing responded that it looked like Moore had poured everything into holding back the impulse sphere and had learned that trick the very instant he got it. Nur admits he knew some folks were quick learners. But what truly shocked him was the sheer amount of magic energy the boy held, even though he didn't know how to control it yet. The Arshu noted that Maur's magic felt like a sudden stop, cutting off whatever he was about to say. Nur leans in to ask what his master was about to say, but the man stays silent, then waves it off with a casual, "Never mind, it was nothing." Virers felt the boy's gaze was empty of desire and seemed almost dead. His illegitimate kids always looked to him for recognition, but his own eyes told a different story. With a smile, the old man tells the boy that he looks just like his mother, Ray, and remembers her as a very interesting child. Back at the third-level training center, a group of warriors are sparring with one another. Mort steps in to watch his teammates fight. After 4 days of feeling like he was dying from boredom, the young man is finally ready to learn something truly useful. He leans in to listen as a background character whispers that the Veerers are picking 5 of the bastard children to fight the combat god's tomb. A boy with brown hair explains that they are on an expedition to find a hidden pattern inside the god of combat's tomb, even though the pattern changes every single time. After hearing all this, Mud realizes Kessner has decided to face the tomb armed with a combat god, so he must rush to become a warrior himself. Daisy rushes to the scene and asks if everyone is there, only to hear that everyone is present except Fun. The instructor stands tall and orders every student to get ready for training. After saying that, the man walks over to our protagonist to ask if he is the novice, and the boy immediately confirms it. The elder tells Moore that since it's his first day, he can't join the training and should ask his friends for help with what has already been taught. Veerers gets annoyed and asks why his teacher won't teach him just because he refuses to learn from other students. Dai's angry words about the young man giving orders right after beating Captain Fine on his first day were met with a retort from the boy, who said he had already been punished for what he did. But this only made things worse, pushing the instructor so angry that he shouted at the boy to shut up and asked if that was how he was supposed to act. Moore keeps a serious face, telling Daisy to take his words as the truth and reminding her that it is the instructor's job to listen. The instructor, unable to stand being spoken to back, explodes in rage and strikes our protagonist. As Moore pulls back from the hit, the old man grabs him by the collar, calls him a brat, and gives him an order. The instructor commands the boy to sprint laps around the center until training is over, demanding he keep up high speed while listening closely to his lessons. Suddenly, the instructor starts laughing with a scary, twisted look and warns that the boy will be punished if he can't answer any questions. Moore struggles to hold it back, but a spark of magic slips out as he tightens his fists, burning with anger over the shame he feels. Seeing this, the elder snaps with rage as he realizes his authority is being challenged once again. The old man is furious that this brat dares to disrespect his authority as an instructor. The old man hit our hero again, mocking his own teacher, which made Moore so angry he had to hold himself back. Right then, the old man started lecturing him, saying the instructor's word was law and that the boy would be kicked out if he kept fighting back, and he immediately asked Moore if he understood. After wiping the blood from his mouth from the old man's hit, the boy started to curse him in his head and wondered if he should strike back. But he changed his mind, knowing that another fight might ruin his chance to become an official warrior. So, he had to wait his turn to finally enter the God of War's tomb. The young man simply nodded and said he understood that he should call the old man sir. Stating that his authority was restored, Daisley questioned why the boy wasn't running, and though he swallowed his anger in silence, our protagonist finally took off as his instructor had ordered. As the instructor watched the student walk away, he promised to make sure the young man got punished for his disrespect. Our protagonist says that after the event, DeLay held a grudge and kept punishing him for no reason at all. It became clear that the old man was constantly attacking the boy. The boy also said that Daisley had let his power go to his head and acted crazy with all the authority he had. If even a tiny bit of his power seemed challenged, he would lash out with words and fists, feeling no sting in his heart and no regret. He always made everyone train as their punishment, and since he was the only one who could make them do it, no one could say no. This is the way Daisy ruled the third tier of the Werner Warriors. A few days later, people noticed Ward practicing a move with just one finger. But even then, the instructor kept grumbling and asking if he was actually breaking his own rules. The young man realized his instructor wasn't angry because Mort had used mana in front of everyone, but because the boy had stopped answering questions entirely, leaving his instructor frustrated and alone. The man told the boy to stay still until the day was done, or he'd get punished again if he moved a single muscle. As Mort exercised, he held back, thinking the old man had a valuable lesson, but it turned out he was just passing on average training. Inside his room, Daly sat lost in thought, resting his chin on his arm. The man cursed Mord, wondering how that brat dared to talk back, knowing the punishment he gave should have broken any body. Moore held out until the very end, acting as if he planned to try again someday, and daring his boss to stop him. The man stared in disbelief at the bastard kid with no training, who had just punched right through the wall. Standing up, he declared that the boy would fall soon, and he would make sure of it with his own hands. The next day, the hero stands ready to take his test and become an official warrior. He stares at the instructor while the other cadets look on in shock at what was just said. The bewildered old man wonders if he heard him right, but our hero just nods and says it's true. An old man quickly scolds him, declaring that he has learned nothing to become a true warrior. Kim isn't scared, though, because she thinks the instructor just didn't do his job. Then he steps up to the old man and says, "Honestly, you're not qualified to teach." The old man gets annoyed and tells him to quit talking nonsense, because he is the only one who decides who gets to take the test. While the old man keeps complaining, the hero sneers and officially challenges the instructor to a fight, daring him to summon his own godlike spirit. When the young man spoke, the old man's mind went blank with shock. Remember that the spirit of the combat god is about the sacred art of the duel. And since those who hold great power also follow old, cruel ways, this fight just proves that the strongest person is always right. They say the combat god only blesses true warriors, so whoever wins the duel is always the one who is right. Soon, the old man asks just how the hero could know that. He insists it doesn't matter because Virer's laws let an apprentice ask their instructor to call upon the combat god spirit. In truth, this story comes from an old legend about a war god who grew up unaware of his own true power. Just like when he was a boy, he got bullied by those who had too much power. Almost as soon as he became king, he told his family that anyone who rules others must truly have the power to do so. So, under Virer's rules, apprentices are free to fight their instructors to win the combat god's spirit. The protagonist thought the old man was crazy at first, but now he's ready to use that madness to his advantage. But soon Daisy grabs his collar, saying he's just a kid who's too young to ask for things or talk about such a sacred right. But the hero quickly hushes him up and warns him not to fool himself, since he has no right to deny the combat god's spirit. Then he lets go of the instructor's hands, turns, and walks away slowly while the instructor watches him go. The protagonist gathers his magic power and shouts for everyone to hear that the apprentice needs the combat god spirit to face Instructor Dai in a duel. He screams the warning over and over, letting the sound bounce off the palace walls until every single person knows what's going on. But the instructor isn't happy about that. But before he can speak, the protagonist spins around and hisses, "Don't even think about saying no to this request." But if he does that, he'll tell everyone he ran away from his own disciple. He gets mad at that brat for acting so bossy. But our hero stands his ground, asking if they truly haven't caught on and declaring this his final chance to prove he is a real instructor. He warned the old man that he'd had enough of wasting time with useless folks like him. The instructor feels the young man's intense pressure and starts wishing he'd worn brown pants, realizing the guy probably didn't show his full power against Fun. Thinking that now he can't hold back, and even though he's talented, he's still just a kid. Delay sighs, admitting he'll regret his outburst and starts getting ready for the fight. But the hero cuts him off to declare that since the challenger picks the time and place, the duel happens right there in an hour because he has no patience for wasting time on useless people like the instructor. As he turns to leave, he promises not to stop him from running away. The instructor is so terrified he can't stop wondering where this crazy person suddenly appeared. A little away from the training ground, shouts echoed through the air, catching the blond man at the window's attention as he wondered what apprentice dared challenge the combat god's spirit against an instructor. The man knew his son wasn't a normal kid, but he never dreamed he could be entertained like this. Soon he calls his servant, who immediately agrees and says they will head to the third-level training center. Then we find out it's the same man he met a few days ago. We headed to the training center and spotted a lot of activity with two others hanging out in the middle of the hall. The main character looked totally cool, while everyone else wondered if this was really the guy who asked for the combat god spirit. We also see Instructor Dai ready for battle, armed with weapons, shields, and armor. Mort steps forward, declaring he chose to fight rather than run, only for his instructor to vow to crush that arrogance with force, a threat that turns out to be useless when the MC replies that a barking dog never bites. The instructor's irritation only grows as the young man remains calm and smiles despite his rude behavior. Suddenly, someone bursts in, asking if they're late because they thought they just missed the chance to make it. Soon, they both see it's Mr. Kessner and start to wonder why he's there. The instructor grows suspicious because he can't believe the hero is talking so calmly to the official. He saw the boy knew the official and realized he wasn't being arrogant since he had powerful people backing him up. Kessner says he already knows what's coming there, then asks what he's planning by trying to get the combat god spirit. Soon Moore steps in to say that the man is failing his duty and is filled only with evil thoughts. This makes Kesmer chuckle softly because he finds the protagonist quite funny. He then challenges our hero to admit that the retired instructor shouldn't be underestimated, warning him that a real fight is about to begin. The old man steps forward and promises to break the hero until he begs for mercy, but insists the fight must wait because his witness hasn't shown up yet. But Casimir quickly asked the instructor if he could step in as the new witness since the other one never showed up. When they hear that, folks in the training center start wondering why Mr. Kessner wants to step up and be the witness for this boy. Even the instructor looks confused, and a blonde man asks him if he thinks he's not qualified for the job. The startle makes the old man turn around fast, claiming Kessner is too busy to talk. When the man speaks to him casually, the blonde man asks if the instructor is being disrespectful and warns that respect isn't about being weak. The old man bows his head fast and says sorry. But naturally, a man as proud as he is wouldn't be happy about getting humiliated. The main character apologizes for interrupting and mentions that the time is nearly here, which confuses Mr. Kessner first. But once he gets it, he wishes the boy good luck and hopes his long trip wasn't in vain. Moore then tells the instructor it's time to begin. The old man, still seething from all those times he was humiliated, wants to jump into the fight too. He claims that the hero, Overpowered, finds speed by strengthening his own body. As he charges his blade with glowing energy, he warns that Mord will soon realize he'll regret relying on such a weak weapon. This shift makes our hero step up and take things more seriously. The old man then keeps talking about wanting to see if Mord can also block a sword with that momentum. But before he can act, the protagonist calls himself funny, leaving Daisley totally puzzled. As Marud readies his aura, he scoffs at the idea that an apprentice would dare challenge an instructor so lightly, then proves his confidence by letting his power spread over his whole body. The old man realizes Mord is moving on pure instinct and can't help but wonder when he learned to do that. Just as he tries to keep thinking, the main character lunges forward, packing all his power into a single fist to strike. But the confident old man shakes his head, insisting that nothing will change. Soon the two attacks smash into each other, sending a mighty shockwave rippling out. But the protagonist's fist lands a winning blow, startling the old man as he sees the attack heading right for him. Soon, he is knocked back by the hero's mighty strength, but he uses all his leg power to stop himself from falling. He grew completely baffled, staring in disbelief as Mord smashed through his strike and knocked him sky high. But he keeps moving forward, getting ready for his next strike. This time, the instructor's shield stops it. He admits our hero is strong, but says those skills won't be enough to beat him. Soon, Mord spots something approaching, and the instructor blasts his shield with a surge of mana that hurls Mord backward, reminding him that despite his strength, he still lacks experience and a true understanding of mana techniques. That's why he's too young to take on someone like him who has lived so much longer. As the hero barely dodges, an attack strikes right at him. But his dodge wasn't quite enough, leaving a tiny cut on his cheek. Seeing things turning bad, the instructor reminds the protagonist that he's walked through 100 battles and come back from the brink of death more times than he can count. It was a death sentence for someone as weak as him to challenge an elder, especially since he wasn't like Mord, a bastard child that people might underestimate. With one final blow, the instructor hurls the MC so far away he flies across the room. He barely keeps his balance and walks much more carefully now. He realizes the old man is right because he has seen more. The blonde man watching the brawl shakes his head, saying the kid has raw talent but still fights like a beginner. If he loses here, he'll have to go, and that is exactly what Dusty wants. He wonders what the young hero will do, even as the instructor yells a joke about the cat stealing his tongue right in the middle of the fight. But Moore steps forward to say that even though the instructor is a jerk, his skills are actually impressive, which makes the old man feel a mix of awe and annoyance at Moore's boldness. Even so, Moore stays icy and retorts that if the instructor believes he'll lose, then that instructor clearly isn't qualified. But the old man just laughs and says he'll train him right here and now. But the MC insists it can't be done, leaving the elder shocked and wondering where all that power came from. Peering closely at the protagonist, he spots that not only has his body changed, but a strange aura is now radiating from him. Seeing the young man's hair turn completely white, the instructor immediately knows he is lost, for his divine power has finally awakened. Our hero opens his eyes, ready to take down that old man. As he gets closer, the elder is now sure he should have worn brown pants to this fight. Mort admits this is the first time he's ever fought this hard, and since he can't stop himself from killing, he figures it's better to stay calm now, so he doesn't hate himself when he becomes a ghost. Once a child from the Vera family turns 15 and awakens their divine blood, they can finally start using its special powers. But most of them stop using the divine blood to grow their mana, and that choice is what lets them unlock incredible powers. But if anyone can master that divine blood, they'll become unstoppable. The crowd in the training room stares in shock, barely believing the protagonist is only 15. Even Nessner is amazed that a 15-year-old boy managed to wake up the power of divine blood. Even though he was seen as the most talented boy, it took him 4 years to finally unlock his true gift. Yet, this young man who showed up only 8 days ago has already climbed all the way to this level. Instructor Ghastly starts wetting himself because staring into the boy's silver eyes makes him sure he has finally awakened the blood. As the hero lets his inner power wash over him, he can't believe what he's feeling, more than offers a bit of mercy, telling him he can quit if he wants to, and the only thing he'll lose is his pride. But the instructor yells, telling him to stop talking nonsense, because even if he does wake up his special powers, he still won't beat a beginner. But before he can finish talking, the hero steps right up to him and warns him not to regret this later. But the old man expected this attack, and he is so sure he can block the protagonist's blow with his shield that he says it will do no damage. But the opposite happens, for with just one hand, our hero sends him flying and dragging him violently across the dirt. Suddenly, it strikes him, and the old man understands that this is the power of divine blood. Mort worries his power is too wild to master, while the old man is sure he just lost to a kid his own age. Even with his shoulder hurt, he keeps his head high and refuses to let anyone break him. He then pours every ounce of his strength into his blade, ready to launch a final, desperate strike. He dashes straight at the hero, ready to strike with a blow powerful enough to end him. But before he could even swing his sword, our hero was already right there, telling him to drop that pride. Then, amazingly, the old man sidesteps the blow, circles around to stand behind him, and shouts for him not to relax his guard because strength means nothing without caution. When it comes to fighting, he's way better than anyone else. After the elders strike, a massive explosion rocks the area, even earning praise from Kessner, who can't believe they turned the tide on their own. But the greatest weapon and shield they have is their own bodies. Soon we saw that the charged sword couldn't even scratch the hero's body, since his awakened divine power made him immune to any pain. In that split second, Instructor Gacy felt a deep, real fear wash over him as he saw his sword, mastered over decades, failing to stop a 15-year-old boy. He then starts swinging it wildly in every direction, only to find that it simply won't work. But our hero just stands there, taking the hits. Soon, he admits he's disappointed because he feels weak, yet still wants to claim the title of the greatest of all. Hearing this makes Ghastly furious, and he gathers all his strength for one more powerful attack. With just his bare hands, the protagonist stops the sword in mid-swing and explains that as a descendant of the god of combat, he fights with his own body because nothing is stronger than his physique. He then asks if the instructor really thought such an attack would hurt him, grips the old man's sword even tighter, and releases a divine electric shock that makes the old man writhe in pain from over 1,000,000 volts. After falling to his knees, Mort grabs the boy and demands he admit defeat, threatening to kill him instantly if he doesn't, while the terrified Delay, who has soiled his pants, finally realizes he can never beat such impossible power. Then he drops his head in cold defeat and bows to our hero. At that very moment, the crowd watching the fight starts shouting that Werner's son has been beaten daily. Even the blonde man was stunned that a bastard son could actually use the divine blood powers once he woke them up. Not only did he nearly kill his instructor in that divine spirit duel, but he also has no idea just how powerful he might become. As he watches the hero walk toward the gate, he whispers that it was a fine fight. From afar, we spot 2 others quietly watching the fight. The hooded figure spoke of the boy's incredible bravery, noting that he faced defeat without fear. Then we find out the hooded figure is a stunning woman named Urn of Verners, who comes from the 7th generation of the Verars. Now, let's head to the castle of Argic Vernars. The old man stays seated on his throne, watching the hero. He says the young man was named a warrior and easily beat Mr. Gacy in their fight. Moore just nods in agreement and steps forward to take what was promised him. Then the Lord asks if he only wanted the combat god spirit to become a warrior faster, but the protagonist replies that he simply couldn't stand there while his instructor let him down. The family leaders step forward to claim that strength always wins, declaring it the unbreakable rule of the Verars. That is why he feels no guilt at all about what he is doing. But what really catches his attention is figuring out why he kept his powers hidden for so long. Our hero explains that he held back and was careful with his mana and impulses because, since this was his first time using them together, he wasn't sure he could control them. The head of the family decides the explanation makes sense. He knows the hero only came to test the combat god's tomb, and the god himself confirms it. But the guard's president warns him to think twice, saying that challenging the tomb before the announcement will only make people complain. When the patriarch got angry at a subordinate for trying to give his opinion, the man quickly asked for forgiveness and worried that he should have worn brown pants instead. He says that a promise is a debt you owe. Suveen lets the hero step into the combat god's tomb, even though he has no idea why he wants to go there. He knelt down to thank the Lord for this decision, gave a small smirk because he finally reached his goal and was ready to grab the first piece of the world. Then the pair reaches the doorway to the combat god's tomb. As we follow the protagonist, Kestner warns that only one person can enter at a time, and the next won't get in until the first one is dead. Moore was shocked because the combat god's tomb in the Archic's basement looked so much bigger and different than he had expected. Soon, the blonde man remarks that he can't believe Mord will be the first to challenge it. He says that since Mord did this, he must make sure to come back alive. Mord starts walking toward the gate, giving thanks to his teacher. But before stepping inside, he halts before the object because simply standing there sends shivers racing down his spine. In the story of the Virers Archduchy, the warrior god Virers had never faced death. So instead, he simply gave up his human life and became a god. The name Combat God's Tomb is just what the Virers chose, though they meant something else by it. Moore remembers a line from a book saying godly people live here, so he opens the door and a blinding light rushes at him. As he gets closer, he realizes that in 7 years, Aiden will find the first piece of the world, and you'll need a helper too. But for now, a piece of that world must still stay inside. Soon, the gate shuts tight and traps the hero inside that spot. As he keeps walking deeper, he finds himself surrounded by some truly weird buildings. He jumps at the sight because it has nothing to do with what the book said would happen. He knew the combat god's tomb had 6 hidden forms, but the one in the story was just a single glimpse into that vast place. No matter which one it is, they all need a seal, so he just has to find it. The stone statue of the combat god seems to come alive, but soon we realize something is watching him. After walking for a while, he says that nothing in that place feels real. It really looks like someone started drawing this in Photoshop and then gave up halfway through. But soon, something grabs his eye as he spots smoke and flames rising from somewhere nearby. He suddenly realized that hellhounds were about to attack him. Plus, there are 2 of them, and our hero is trapped while the rabid dogs watch him. Mord, who braced for only a few monsters, feels a sting of disappointment when he suddenly sees a hellhound charging right at him. With a sudden strike, he stops the first hellhound in its tracks, then uses his magic to rip the beast in half before it can reach him. As he keeps looking for the statues, he complains that it is just too tiring. Eventually, he arrives at his goal and discovers the hidden seal. He spots a statue of the combat god crushing young Eden, but he can't figure out why that moment was turned into a seal. He thinks that putting up such a statue shows off a lot of pride and proves the man standing on the creature is the same guy. The protagonist spreads his arms wide, leaps in a single bound to the statue's top, lands with ease, and finally stands before the ancestor. When he looked at the statue, he saw it was made to look like a 10-year-old, and that's why all his family members seem like they've been drinking too much juice. Word snaps the combat god's blood awake and draws a quick line across his arm. He walks up to the founder's statue and pours some of his blood on it, grateful for the little clue that made finding it so easy. Who would have thought that after waking up their divine power, they'd have to put some of it on the statue of the battle god? Then he leaps down from the giant statue, convinced he's lucky to be the first to make the jump. But he must hurry and rush to the next seal before it's too late. Just as he walks away, we see the statue turn to watch him with a cracking skull. After facing giant snakes, hellhounds, skeletons, and other scary monsters, the hero has finally changed a lot. Now, he's busy putting the final touches on one of the skeletons. But these monsters keep showing up out of nowhere. He figures that since he's stuck in a narrow alley, there's no escape from them. With the giant snake lunging at him, he realizes the combat god's test should have been much simpler. He then gathers all his magical energy into his fist, ready to smash through every enemy in his path, convinced this is the final test the combat god has for him. While some flying monsters watch our hero from above, he soon realizes they're actually guarding the wall's top to stop him from climbing over. At least he can rest easy knowing he won't have to struggle against them while on the ground. He's already found 5 of the seals, so there's just 1 left to find. Then he can finally get his piece of the world. As he steps forward, he feels the mana inside him growing stronger. And maybe because he has awakened the divine blood 5 times, he's running dangerously low on his magical energy. Suddenly, something grabs his focus and brings him to a halt. Mord lifts his eyes, staring back with a look that says he means business. It looks like he's finally found the 6th seal, which turns out to be a huge stone dragon. Like the other statues, this one is huge and looks so tall that climbing will be a real challenge. Just before he moves, the sound grabs his attention. As he turns to look behind him, a giant blue ogre is staring straight at him. He snaps into a fighting pose instantly, knowing this beast is a nightmare, even for masters of magic. The blue ogre lets out a thunderous roar, slams its fist down to crack the floor, and charges right at our hero. Mord nimbly slips past the ogre's blow, realizing the beast is just an ordinary one since most stand only 4 meters tall. The monster standing right in front of him must be taller than 5 meters. The fight goes on as the blue giant swings at the hero, while Mord flies around with all his speed to dodge the blows. Just as he gets ready to strike back, he wonders if everything was too simple and decides that fighting this monster will be far more exciting. Mord suddenly launches a rapid series of attacks at the ogre, even pushing the big blue monster backward. But in his distraction, the ogre snatches him from the air and smashes him into the wall, leaving the hero badly hurt. In that instant, he sees that a sudden burst of energy won't be enough to beat it. He watches the huge monster sprinting straight at him with its fist raised, ready to strike. And in that split second, he decides he has to use that trick. But it might already be too late because the ogre smashes into the boy and feels like a winner after beating his enemy so easily. But the ogre is shocked by an explosion from the crater it made, while the hero explains he's just a rookie with great genes. The blast blasts the ogre flying backward several meters. We then see that the protagonist tapped into his best instincts, knowing that even a second more would mean his death. The angry ogre stands up, ready for the next round. But what it didn't expect was to see the hero slam a giant ball of energy into his fist. As Mord orders the blue giant to quiet down, he lands a hit that blows everything up and wipes the ogre off the face of the earth. Even though he won, Mord feels a tinge of disappointment because he had to tap into his divine blood just to get there. He was convinced he could win the fight without ever having to use the power. Mord turns and walks away from his enemy, convinced that this dungeon belongs to young boys from a noble family and that real fighting skill and tough training make all the difference. So he decides to start everything from scratch the moment he leaves. He climbs the stone dragon to the top, looks at the combat god, and realizes the difference in their heights. Since his father is a towering 25 meters tall, the combat god who claims to be his ancestor should be even bigger. But honestly, it doesn't really matter. He spills his blood on the statue in a desperate gamble to catch a piece of the world. Then time slips by, and nothing at all happens. Mort realizes something is wrong because he should have gotten a piece of the world after activating all the statues, so he suspects he forgot a seal and decides to retrace his steps to find each one. Suddenly, a voice cut through the silence, saying it was disappointed and had expected his family to be much stronger. As he spins around, he finds a strange man staring right back at him. We quickly see that the living combat god statue is the man who says he'd have felt sad for his descendants if he had stayed there. Our hero steps into the combat god's tomb because he remembers how the book's main character once found a piece of the world inside it. But all he can see is a statue that moves and speaks. Our hero can't help but wonder if these strange symbols might actually be a secret message hidden in the plain sight. He asks the man who he is, but the man ignores the question to ask how old Mort is. But Mort's instinct kicks in, and he stays focused on finding this mysterious man, which really impresses the elder before he charges forward, landing a punch so hard it sends a shockwave crashing out. But the attack hits the man like a feather, and he just tells Mort he's going too far. He strikes back instantly, hurling the protagonist backward until he smashes into a wall and stands there, dazed and unsure of what just occurred. But then he spots the huge figure jumping right at him, shouting that it's time to give him a proper welcome. A heavy punch hits Mort right in the gut, sending him crashing into the ground like a cannonball. The force is so powerful it blasts a huge cloud of dust into the air. Soon, we see the protagonist stumbling out of the crater, scratched and shaken, wondering if he's losing his mind after that stone statue just seconds before was real. The old man asks if Mort really doesn't know who he is, and Mort answers that he is the stone statue of the combat god. But the man quickly explains that he isn't a statue, but the human shadow the combat god left behind, and our hero is shocked because the novel said the god's tomb held his remains, and that meant the tomb was built for his human self, not his godly one. However, the book revealed that the statues stood for his greatest achievements and likely carried his very will. So the elder insisted that even though it sounds impossible, it is true and he would show a little of his power to make you believe it. As the elder warns that reality checks hurt for real, the protagonist suddenly sees only a shadowy hand reaching out. He lands a hard punch on his own descendant, who just barely manages to defend himself. The elder grins, thrilled to admit the hero is far weaker than he thought. Our hero refuses to back down and starts charging his Sadama punch, which makes the ancestor thrilled to see Mort has the energy to fight him. Mort throws a straight punch, but the hero slips away and steps right into the elder's blind spot, leaving the old man impressed by how fast the young man is. As Mort gathers a devastating blow meant to end his life, he instead surges forward, firing a Kamehameha charged with his very soul. But the real truth is that the elder looks disappointed with his own trick, easily swatting the energy ball away just as it comes near. Moore uses the smoke from the explosion to grab the old man, who is shocked to find the bomb was just a fake.